Hello. There's a lovely quote by Marcel Proust, and it's the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. I love that. Before I tell you about my fractured foot, I want to take you somewhere. Imagine an old country manor, and it's surrounded by extraordinary gardens that are bursting with colour. Ancient trees offering cool shade, birdsong filling the air, and a sense of somehow there's a possibility to move at a gentler pace. That place is Kilmokea Country Manor and Gardens in County Wexford. And if you've never been, I hope one day that you will. Because it's one of those places that doesn't simply offer accommodation, it offers restoration. Mark and Emma have created something very special there. And from the moment you arrive, you're not welcomed just as guests, but almost as family. There's a kindness in every corner. We had meals lovingly produced from their own gardens, grow their own vegetables there. And somehow the conversations there are never hurried. And I don't know, I think I felt as though I'd stepped out of a life full of business where my shoulders could really relax and I could really find my breath. And it was there, surrounded by beauty, that I fractured my foot while I was dancing. And there's an irony in that, isn't there? One moment I'm full of joy, moving freely, and the next I couldn't even put my foot on the ground. And my first thought certainly wasn't, I wonder what life lesson I will learn with this. It was more along the lines of, really? You've got to be kidding. But looking back, I can't help feeling what a perfect place to begin healing. Instead of panic, there was calm. And instead of feeling like a nuisance, I was enveloped in care. Emma and Mark quietly stepped in with such compassion, kindness. I'll never forget it. And there was practical help, yes, there was, no doubt about it. I was lent a boot, I had my foot elevated, I had heat treatment to support my healing. I was offered herbal remedies. But there was also something much deeper. I think they created such an atmosphere where I felt safe and looked after and totally able to surrender to what was happening rather than fight against it. Those beautiful meals, prepared with ingredients from the garden, somehow became more than food. It was a form of nourishment in every sense of the word. And as my body was healing, so was my spirit. And sometimes healing isn't found in medicine alone. Healing is found in kindness, a beautiful environment, in people who make you feel heard, in stillness, in laughter. in someone saying, "We've got you." And I sat in those gardens and I watched the flowers dancing in the breeze. And it was such a reminder of the Thich Nhat Hanh quote about how nature never hurries. Those roses weren't rushing to become daisies. The great old trees and the shrubs weren't worrying about what they were going to become today. Everything simply was. Everything was so peaceful around me, so gentle, so golden. And I can hear a siren outside. And I'm reminded that life goes on. But do you know what? Sat in that beautiful chair, my friend Johnny supporting me, looking after my every request. And perhaps that's where this particular journey began for me. I've been told for years, by family, by friends, I've become very good at doing, organising, planning, giving. And perhaps I'd forgotten how to simply be. This little fracture has become a doorway into a much bigger healing than I ever expected. I don't know where you are today. Maybe you're walking the dog, driving the car, sitting in a garden with a cup of tea, or maybe just taking a few precious moments for yourself. I invite you to share this time with me. I hadn't planned this podcast today. And certainly if you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago what I'd be talking about, it really would not have been a fractured foot. But life has a wonderful way of changing our plans. When I fractured my foot, I was dancing. We'd been practicing Qigong on the lawn. Emma was teaching. I was in a very zen place. I was feeling joyful and happy. And so, yeah, I was bobbing about. And there is probably some sort of lesson in there about enthusiasm exceeding wisdom. And yes, my first reaction was really, now? I had plans in the diary, people to see, things I needed to do, promises I'd made that I didn't want to rescind. I had a life that felt comfortably full. And then, quite literally, I couldn't put my foot on the ground. I was stopped, not gradually, but instantly. Looking back, if I think about it, something much bigger happened than the fracture. Sometimes the universe whispers, and sometimes it nudges. And occasionally, when we've ignored the whispers and the nudges because we're too busy, too full, or it's not convenient, the universe says, sit down because there is something I would like you to learn. And perhaps that's where I found myself. And before I go any further, I would like to just clarify. I wouldn't recommend fracturing a foot as a spiritual practice. But with every challenging event in our lives, every different experience, there do come gifts. Sometimes we just need to stop for long enough to unwrap those gifts. And one of the very first gifts I discovered was something that quite surprised me, actually. I wouldn't be able to teach yoga or qigong. I genuinely would miss teaching. It was clear in my mind I was going to miss teaching. Not because it provides an income, although it does. Not because people expected me to do it, but because I love it, and I truly love it. So during my recovery, I've decided to offer a few little half-hour or 40-minute pop-up classes. Nothing elaborate. Gentle floor-based yoga, chair qigong, slow movement, simple breathing, time to rest. And what struck me wasn't that I was teaching. That was why I wanted to teach. And it wasn't about perfect alignment or flexibility or achieving something. I suppose it was about creating a space where people could simply arrive exactly as they are. And that's whether you're tired, anxious, grieving, healing. Or maybe, some people just needed permission to stop trying quite so hard. None of us lives permanently in the optimal. We all have seasons. And there are seasons when we feel energized and strong, and there are seasons when life asks us to rest. And perhaps the greatest act of self-care is not to push through. Maybe it's just learning to honor the season that we're in. I know I've often denied myself that permission. How often do you think you have? How often do you think, I'll rest when? I'll look after myself when? I'll slow down when? Life doesn't always wait for us to decide. Sometimes it decides it for us. Life takes over. It teaches us. The second gift. And that second gift for me has been receiving. Now, if you're anything like me, you may find giving much easier than receiving. I've spent many years looking after other people, teaching, supporting, listening, celebrating, certainly, holding space. It's comfortable there for me. Receiving, that's another matter entirely. Since breaking my foot, my companion has cared for me with a tenderness that has honestly taken my breath away. who's done the shopping, the washing, and my clothes. Prepared beautiful, nourishing food. In fact, he's cooked every meal. He's driven me everywhere. Fetched things before I even knew I needed them. Never once made me feel like a burden. Never keeping the score. Never expecting anything back. Just love. Pure, generous, unconditional love. And it has made me reflect on a rather uncomfortable question for me. I know I'm not alone. Why do so many of us find unconditional receiving harder than unconditional giving? Perhaps somewhere along the line, we've been taught that our worth lies in what we do, how useful we are, how productive we are, how much we contribute. But what if love isn't earned? What if it's simply received? So this has been one of my deepest lessons. To allow someone else the joy of caring. To realize that accepting help can be every bit as generous as offering it. So, another unexpected gift has been friendship. Friends who've collected me for lunch or a coffee, who've appeared with flowers, and I include relatives in that as well. Messages, phone calls, laughter. Oh, there's been a lot of that. People who've quietly reminded me that connection isn't measured by grand gestures. It's measured by presence. You really do discover who walks beside you when your pace slows down. And what a blessing that is. Friendship, it's not simply about having people around us, it's about knowing we belong. And I've felt that belonging so deeply over the past few weeks. From my family, both in the UK and in Australia. From friends. From my yoga and qigong community. From people I've never even met, actually, who've sent beautiful messages. To each of you, thank you. You've reminded me that kindness has extraordinary healing power. Then there's Wimbledon. I've always tried to make time for Wimbledon. I've gone to Wimbledon for many, many years. And my children, when they were small, didn't think they had a decent meal while Wimbledon was on. I was always just about to go and get something for them to eat. Just a minute, I've just watched this set. But as they've grown up and I've worked more full time, if you'd told me I'd spend a full week watching every match I could on Wimbledon, I'd have laughed. Because I'd have watched what I could, but I would have been busy. Instead, I've sat quietly, leg elevated. I've watched incredible athletes been listening to the rhythm of the game. I've been watching sunlight move across the garden. It's funny how much beauty exists in ordinary moments once we actually notice them. We spend so much time in our lives trying to create memorable experiences. And yet sometimes the moments we remember are the simplest. A cup of tea, a granddaughter with a bunch of flowers and a hug, birdsong, fresh strawberries, sunshine, someone sitting next to you, a sunrise, a sunset, the smell of newly mown grass. It's a reminder, isn't it? Perhaps the greatest gift has been space. Space to think, space to reflect, space to ask myself questions I haven't allowed myself to ask. For years, my diary has quietly filled itself. Weekly classes, monthly commitments, retreats, podcasts, workshops. I love every one of them. I have filled that diary. But somewhere, without noticing, commitment has gradually become obligation. And at the beginning of this year, I did find myself asking, what would happen if my work supported my life instead of my life supporting my work? And I did think I was putting into place a new way of being. It's a subtle difference, isn't it? Work supporting life versus life supporting work. But it's a transformational one, because I don't want to stop teaching and sharing, far from it. I absolutely love sharing what I've learned over the years. But perhaps there are different ways of doing it. Perhaps fewer regular commitments. Maybe more workshops and more pop-up classes. Half an hour, 40 minutes. Coming from a place of joy from my heart. Because I choose to, not because it's on a timetable. More freedom. More creativity. More spaciousness. And spaciousness was my word for 2026 at the start of the year. Enough structure to serve people. Enough flexibility to enjoy my own life. After all, isn't that what well-being is? Creating a life that feels well. Not simply looking well from the outside, feeling well from the inside. I think I might have just reached that age where, quietly, success has changed definition. Certainly when I was younger, it was entirely related to achieving. Achievements. I can honestly say that success looks very different to me now. It looks like having time for coffee with a friend. Spending a couple of hours reading a book. saying yes to a spontaneous invitation. Ooh, that's a big one. Visiting family without worrying about cancelling something. Walking in nature. Teaching because I want to, not because I have to. Most of all, protecting the relationships that make my life feel really rich. Because at the end of the day, I don't think we'll all wish we'd squeezed one more appointment into the diary. I think we remember conversations, kindness, connection, love, the people who held us, and the people we held in return. So perhaps the fractured foot hasn't interrupted my life at all. Perhaps it's simply redirected it. Put it onto another road. Maybe it's just pointed me towards the next chapter. A little more breathing. A little less obligation. A little more intention. A little less doing. Much more being. And somehow right now, that feels exactly right. I'd love to ask you a gentle question. What's life trying to teach you in this moment? Not what's gone wrong, but what invitation might be hidden in what you're experiencing right now. And perhaps your gift isn't wrapped in difficulty. Perhaps it's wrapped in change, or grief, or uncertainty, or unexpected stillness. Maybe it's a result of a new moon, a changed feeling from within. Whatever it is, approach it gently, curiously, without needing all the answers. Because sometimes our greatest teachers arrive disguised as the very things we would never have chosen. It's funny, isn't it? I arrived at Kilmokea expecting a lovely holiday and left with a fractured foot. At the time, it felt as though that holiday had been interrupted, but I see it differently now. Kilmokea gave me exactly what I needed. Not just beautiful gardens and extraordinary hospitality, but the place where life gently invited me to change direction. And yes, sometimes our gifts don't arrive wrapped as we choose them with a beautiful bow on top. Sometimes they arrive as inconvenience. But if we're willing to receive them, they gently and quietly can change everything. So thank you for walking beside me through this unexpected chapter. I have a feeling that what comes next will be different. Not because I've changed who I am, but because perhaps I remembered who I wanted to be all along. In the words of Wayne Dyer, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So until next time, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, and never underestimate the unexpected gifts that arrive when life slows you down. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your feedback really helps shape future episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with family and friends who might benefit too. If you've any questions or if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, I'd be delighted to hear from you. Until next time, take good care and thank you again for being here.